Kia ora koutou. My name is James Russell, and if you're here, you've found Mad Surf Stories. I'm a surfer, former journo, and author of surf fiction. There's a bit more about that at the end of the podcast if you're interested. But most of all, I'm an enthusiastic appreciator of a good story, especially if it has surfers or surfing involved. There's a rich vein of stories out there in the surf community, of exploration, heroism, yard sales, wildlife encounters, loose units, disasters, and just general epicness. It's those yarns I plan to mine with Mad Surf Stories. So if you have one or know of one, get in touch by emailing me at james@dragonbrothersbooks.com. Righto, on with the show. Daniel Poole, welcome to Mad Surf Stories. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, James. Yeah, real cool to be on. It's nice to meet you.
Before we get into your story, I read in one of the news reports that you were a Cornish surfer from Cornwall in the UK, and I don't know if you're still there. Do you still live down in Cornwall? Or let's go back. Were you brought up there, or?
Yeah, so no, I've lived in Cornwall. Well, I suppose I call Cornwall my base. I'm a transplant in Cornwall. I'm actually from over on the east coast in East Anglia, Norfolk. So that's where I was born, and then kind of as soon as I'd finished my schooling, I kind of split and head over to Wales, and then taught outdoor education and climbing and what have you. And basically, I just meandered a lot, and surfing brought me down to Cornwall. So yeah, that's been based since 2000.
Awesome. So obviously, there's not much surf in East Anglia, right?
Oh, you'd be surprised, man. Yeah,
you get waves up there?
Yeah, and when you do, because there's a lot of so the banks are mostly made up over like sandbanks, but also with sediment as well from estuaries, and there's loads of coastal erosion protection from coastal erosion along the coast. Loads of groins, loads of like little artificial reefs. And so when a swell does come through, and like if you go further around to the south, like through to Suffolk, you need that real strong southerly swell. But if you get something from the north, it doesn't come through very often, but when it does, all of the banks are just pristine. And so you get like 2 to 3 days before it will get smashed up of just perfect tubes just like rattling down in between all these groins. And as the tide goes out, it kind of like stacks up around these groins where I like to surf when I'm back there. But it's really chocolatey, like the water is really brown. But
yeah, right. Sounds like novelty wave heaven.
It is, yeah.
So I've spent a bit of time.
Nice.
Cornwall's lovely, yeah. I spent a bit of time down there, and Cornwall and Devon, and I'm not sure we got great surf, but it always seemed to be offshore at the pub. There was it's a lovely part of the world, eh?
It is, yeah. Yeah, it's lush. It's getting busier. Certainly since lockdown, I think everyone in their cities wanted to be out in the countryside and have that idyllic life. But it's beautiful. Like we've got these really rugged cliff paths. I do a lot of kind of trail running as well, and so just really enjoying the coast paths, like running around up and down all these big cliff faces. And it's beautiful, nice and secluded, really good beer, great pasties, and awesome surf.
Classic. Yeah, as a Kiwi, I did enjoy the pasties, but I did see a sign on a shop window that said, guaranteed 13% meat.
Yeah.
That seems kind of low to me.
That's not a strong claim. I take like on the hot pasties and pies. When I was over in New Zealand, I remember like it being a eureka moment when I walked into a bar and they had like a hot table at the back of the bar with loads of different pies, and so you can have a pint and a pie, and it just made so much sense. I was like, why don't we do that?
Yeah, it's very good.
Packs of crisps, but not hot pies.
Yeah, every service station, every little corner store, there's a pie warmer. Yeah,
I love it. So smart.
Yeah. All right, that's cool, Daniel. Okay, so we're going to take you back now. It's 21 years, right? And you went for a trip to Sri Lanka. Is that right? And you weren't alone? You had someone with you?
Yeah, there's a couple of us actually. So yeah, I was with my now wife. We travelled over with a couple of friends, and the plan was that we'd fly over to Sri Lanka. We'd go and have a bit of an explore, and we'd stay there over the winter. So we'd got there in November, and yeah, and the plan was essentially spend 3 or so months over there, and then maybe go into India for the rest of the winter, and just try and live cheap but explore some of the waves. And we just a friend of ours that had just been out to Sri Lanka had said that where you've got the Tamil tigers up on the east coast, that kind of that area had opened up, so you could actually start surfing further up on that coast, and that hadn't been done for years and years. So we were quite pumped to go and explore that new section. But anyway, so we headed over there, and we had, I think it was a month or so we were there, leading up towards Christmas, and we found ourselves right down on the south in a place called, well, everyone calls it Rams or Rams Wave, but it's down between Midi Gamma and Welly Gamma, and it's just beautiful, palm trees, it's quite rocky coastline, so it holds a good wave, and yeah, it was idyllic. It was like the best curries. We were living with this really lovely family in this guest house that they'd set up, and it was real, like, I've seen pictures of it since, and they have gone to town. It's like beautiful. It's 2 stories and like block walls and everything, but at the time it was, yeah, single skin block walls with corrugated wriggly tin roofs, held up by yeah, kind of goodwill and wishes mostly, and the windows were always open, and the doors barely worked, and yeah, it was perfect.
You like it when you're on holiday, isn't it?
Exactly, it was just perfect, and like you could throw a cricket ball into the wave, into the lineup from where we stayed, and so the routine was like you'd get up, crack a sparrows. I'd normally sleep in my boardies, and sneak out, grab my board, go down for a surf, like get that real glassy early morning surf, and then when you're starting to get hungry or the wave's starting to get really busy, then come in, have some porridge with some bananas and honey and a coffee, and then make a plan for the day, and then yeah, in the evenings go and surf again when it started glassing off, and that was pretty much the routine for a month. It was so much fun.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Can I ask how old you were, Daniel, then?
Yeah, 20.
You look like a spring chicken now to me, but
Thanks, buddy. Well, I am, yeah. Like, I am a whippersnapper. I turned 45 this year, so I am. Yeah, so it was like.
So that makes you 24?
Yeah, I was just trying to think. Yeah, I must have been about 24. And my wife is 2 years younger than me, so yeah, we were young and traveling during the winter, and then in the summers working hard. So
awesome.
yeah, it was good.
Did you have a couple of friends as well?
Yeah, so we travelled out with a friend Poole and a friend Dave, and then another friend Ben, who travelled out shortly after. No, sorry, he travelled out with us, but he left just before Christmas. But yeah, so we kind of all travelled up from Cornwall and decided we were going to make a home of Sri Lanka for the winter, and it was yeah, it's a nice group of us. And as soon as we got there, we bumped into, there were some lifeguards from Devon and a couple of brothers from Devon that were, I think they turned pro for a while. I can't remember, and I'm really rubbish with names, but Danny and a couple of the other chaps. But
Wow.
really lovely guys, really fun, like shredders, and it was just a wonderful lineup to be in, like every morning.
Yeah. And so Christmas Day, more of the same? Is there anything special on Christmas Day?
Yeah, so Christmas Day we head around a couple of bays, and we treat ourselves to a meal out. Normally we're eating like just the real cheap local curries and whatnot. But this night we were like, we're going to go out, we'll go and find a nice bar, we'll have a meal, we'll have a couple of beers for Christmas Eve, and then back home Christmas Eve, we'll get a bus, and so to bed. And so we did that, and yeah, it was really nice. Everyone that was staying at this guest house kind of all went out en masse. It was really lovely. A couple of beers, headed back home, and so to bed. Went to sleep in my boardies, ready to
So
get
that
up
would
for
have
the
been
year.
sorry, that would have been Christmas Day, Daniel. Is that right?
Oh, sorry, yeah, Christmas Day.
Christmas
Yep.
Day. Yeah, yeah.
No, you're right. Yeah, yeah. So that was Christmas Day, and yeah, it was really nice. We had one of those beautiful moments where actually I remember we were walking back along the beach, and there were some little baby tortoises popping out of the sand, and I remember having a moment like, and I shouldn't do this. I know this now, but you grabbed it up and help it down to the shore and watched it swim away. I was like, oh, this is lovely. It was pretty magical. Yeah, and that was like Boxing Day closing out nicely. Sorry, I'm bouncing around. That was Christmas Day closing out nicely.
Yeah, Boxing Day didn't close out quite so nicely. So those that are can remember will realise that we're talking about 2004 Boxing Day. So yeah, what I can't remember what time what time this happened on Boxing
So
Day.
for us, I can't remember exactly the exact time, but it was early morning. So the sun had risen, but it was still early. And yeah, like
So did you get woken by an earthquake?
no. So the earthquakes really was over in Indonesia, so that was quite far away. So what I was woken to was like screaming and shouting of the people that were already up. There was some of the family that the guest house that we were staying at. There were a couple there, and then a couple of guys that were already up having breakfast, and some that were out surfing, and just heard this horrible shout. Well, first of all, it was like a curious thing of like, hey, 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 come and look at this. And only a couple of nights beforehand, someone would shout, hey, come and look at this. And there was this huge black snake just going through the grass just in front of where we were staying. And it was really like, wow, look at this. This is huge. This is definitely a man-eater. And so I thought it was something similar. And I pulled back the cloth. And I just remember seeing like this huge wall of white water marching along the sea and then coming up the beach. And then I was like, whoa. At which point Donna had jumped up and she was like, what's going on? What's going on? And this body of white water it just tumbled up the beach onto, there was probably, I guess, 10 meters of grass between the beach and the actual guest house. And it just rolled through. And I turned around. Donna can't swim very well. And so immediately I was like, I'd never heard of tsunamis before. Like at that time, everyone was like, what? It was just like a tidal surge, but one that was totally out of whack with anything I've ever seen before. So I just said, I think it's a surge of some sort. And I grabbed hold of Donna, and there's this, in our little square room, you kind of come in this way. The water was coming this way. This is the front door. And there was a partition wall here, so a big double bed here, and then like a little shower room here. And I remember on that like partition wall, I just tried to hike Donna up onto it so she'd be out of the water, just assuming it would come in like knee depth or something like this. But then suddenly the front door smashes open, and like I just remember the water coming and taking my footing, and I'd kind of like went round the room in a bit of a vortex. And then just as I was coming back round to Donna, I'd grabbed hold of Donna again, and then the front wall smashed in. And next thing I know, I'm looking up as it's just water, and the roof just dropped down on us as well.
Holy
And yeah, man, like
yeah.
I go over it time and time again. Like not so much now because I think I've done my healing, but whenever I'm recanting the tale, or this time of year when it comes to Boxing Day, and Don and I will just like have a nod and wow, still here sort of thing. But I just can't figure out the maths of it. Like we essentially got washed through those two, like the supporting wall, the exterior wall. Then there was a compound wall. Then there was the huge ditch. Then across the road. And then into the jungle, the other side, like 50 odd meters into the jungle through all the trees and debris. And then just suddenly...
So if we go back, you looked up, you saw the roof coming down on you, and did that did that kind of push you guys under the water, or what happened? Or did the whole thing just go boof off to the side? And
Yeah, I don't really remember from the moment. The only bit that I can vividly remember is holding Don and then the roof coming down, because essentially I was trying to get her up onto this partition wall, and then when I saw the roof just like kind of came down, and it wasn't like super fast, it just went poof as the building was essentially just falling over. And I remember pulling Don down, and then I can't remember being bounced through the walls or through the ditch or anything like that.
right,
The next thing I remember, and it could have only been 3 or 4 seconds, and I attribute some of it to being a surfer, getting used to having a kicking, and like tumbling after like wiping out on a wave or whatever, or a bad duck dive when you're getting tumbled by the big waves and whatnot, and then just popped up and like was floating and going through the trees really quickly. And I remember seeing this debris all wrapped around one of the coconut trees, and I just grabbed on her and I kind of threw her up on top of it. And all of this was happening quite quickly, but I remember throwing her up onto that, and she scrambles up, and then a log or something, I never saw what it was, but hit me and took me under all this mash of crap. And like I used to be a kayaking guide when I was a lot younger, and I remember this is like a bad place to be when it's all debris mashed up. It's a strainer, and yeah, I had an instant thought of, oh, this isn't good. But then miraculously, I just pop up the other side in the eddy of the tree and all the debris, and then climb up onto all the debris to be with Donna. And just looking around, and there's just water everywhere. And
is it still just pouring inland like a river? Just
yeah, so it's kind of, by the time I get up, like the velocity of it had slowed a little, and it kind of over. It's hard to know with times, but it felt like only 10 seconds or so. The water kind of just calmed down, and although it's swirling everywhere and it's really dirty and loads of debris everywhere, it just started like easing out again. And yeah, I remember it just going out, but everywhere that held water, any low points was just full of water, and it felt like it just been a flood. And I looked up to the road, and I could see the road, and I could see where our guest house was, and the guest house wasn't there anymore, and neither was the family that we used to go across the road to go and buy hot bottles of Coca-Cola that had been out on the side of the road. That wasn't there either, and I was like, shit, man, this is... What is this? And then
at that point you still hadn't realised. Can I ask, Daniel, was the ground that you were on, does it sort of go uphill reasonably quickly, or is it sort of flat for a long way? Like if you were to estimate how far that water travelled inland, I mean, I guess you probably figured all this out later, eh?
Yeah, it's really dense jungle behind us, so it's hard to see, but
Right.
It does start going uphill probably half a kilometre, and then it starts going up into some foothills, not huge ones, but and I don't think it had got all that way.
Yeah, and at this stage you still hadn't thought this is a tsunami.
No, honestly, it was in my lexicon. I was like, this is some weird tidal surge. It was only later when we heard on the news that it was a tsunami that the penny dropped. I was like, oh wow, okay. But like, yeah, and so we're up on the trees, and it's really hot as well. It's like really hot. And so Donna had been sleeping naked, and I saw a few people popping up, and they were all naked, and I was like, this is strange. But of course, everyone was sleeping like naked in the beds to try and keep cold. And I remember, or cooler, and I remember this suitcase had washed past us with loads of clothes hanging out of it, and I just grabbed a couple of bits of clothing and handed it to Donna. And then this guy, Twiggy was his name, came out of the bush with a little dog over his bits and pieces. And he just walked out like all dishevelled, like because he normally had curly hair from memory, and it was all just like lopsided on one side. He had this little dog, and he'd waded out, and we're looking at each other going, what the hell's going on? Yeah, poor dog. I mean, the dog's just survived a tsunami only to get picked up by this curly British dude.
Yeah.
So then we're like looking at each other going, Christ, what was going on? And like my heart is pounding, but I'm not like freaked out at this stage. But I'm like, what about everyone else? And so we wade our way back to the road, and like the road is built up on a higher level. It's only like maybe a foot in elevation, but it's slightly raised because I guess it's a coastal mainish road. And I say main road, but it's like, I think it was metalled, but it was, yeah, really low quality, proper, rural, jungly type road. And now we get to the road, and people start coming that we'd been staying with. And there was like 6 to 8 of us started to gather around going, whoa, and there's various cuts and slashes, and this French guy had been electrocuted and then stabbed by a tree, and there were, all sorts of weird wounds, weird and wonderful wounds, but no one was too fussed about it at the moment, and we were trying to do a head count, but like all of this time the water was also receding, and that was the bit that really started getting me going. Like everything that had happened, I was like, okay, cool, we're here, what's next? But then the water started running out, and you could actually see the reef. You could see the reef of the wave we've been surfing, and it just kept on retracting out as far as the eye could see. You could just see the seabed. Like it was just the craziest thing. And I was like, well, it's going back out, so I'm pretty sure it's going to come back in a minute. So we need a plan. And yeah, I guess like my previous life, I'd been in like mountain rescue teams and a mountain guide, like low level mountain guide. And so like a bit of that, right, here's the plan, like who's here, did a bit of a head check, like any real major wounds. No one was laying down, no one was like, unconscious or anything like that, but everyone was freaked out. And so I was like, right, here's the plan, everyone just go through the rubble of where their guest house was. We just need to find all the water bottles we can find, if there are any med kits, and maybe we should put some clothes on as well, and let's get out of here. And so all the time, like everyone's having a quick rummage around, and I'm trying to remember everyone, because it's weird. You spend like a few weeks with a bunch of 8 or 9 people, and I'm like, couldn't remember everyone, and is Danny here? Is blah blah. We did this count. Like there was a couple of people missing. And we're like, okay, let's just get everyone back. So you have to go along the coastal road over this bridge, and then there's a little road that goes inland past another couple of guest houses and then into a village. And I was like, let's just get inland and then try and find some altitude, and then let's have a reassess. And everyone was like, yeah, cool. And I was like, okay, let's go. We've got a load of water bottles. We've got the first aid kits. We started walking. We found one first aid kit, and we started walking, and then it turned into a jog, and then suddenly we're all running, and this water's still out. No, actually, that's wrong. It had started to fill back in. That's right, but it didn't come as like a huge surge. It kind of just like the level rose, but it created all these huge vortexes, and it was really unsettled and scary to see. But we made our way along this coast road, inland a little bit, did another head check. There were some people coming down the other way to see what was happening, and I think that's where we met with a couple of the people that were missing. But we couldn't find the family that was behind us, and we couldn't find the family that we were staying with. And we looked around through the rubble, and it was like, okay, this is mad. And then, like, that's kind of, I suppose that's phase 1 of like the whole episode. That was like the main part. I just shaped a surfboard to bring out. It was the first board I've ever made, and it was like a magic carpet, like real wide in the nose, quite wide in the tail, single fin with a couple of little trailing fins, and that had gone missing. My other surfboards were all gone, and but yeah, I wasn't worried. I just wanted to get out there. But that was like the start.
And so did that water ever come back in? Was there a second surge?
So it wasn't so much the surge, but it did fill up. It just kind of like the levels found its equilibrium, and it did overlap a few times, and sometimes it's I don't know how to explain it. It's almost like you're filling a dish full of water, and the ripples kind of like come to the edge, overlap a little bit, come back in, and eventually finds its settling place through that surface tension. But it was, you could see all the eddies and the vortexes, and it was, yeah, it was just so mad to see. It was like I've never seen anything like that before.
Yeah. And the ocean must have just been full of debris, right?
Yeah, yeah, it was like a different color, and there was just stuff in random places. It was,
Yeah.
yeah. Fast forward on like a bunch of years, and I I moved into the humanitarian sector. And the next time I saw stuff like that was in the Philippines, Typhoon Yolanda, and yeah, where you see the boats inland by a couple of kilometres and things like that. It was,
Yeah. I spent 5 weeks out in Siargao Island in the Philippines.
ah,
Oh boy, it was a long time ago. Maybe 25. Yeah, maybe even nearly close to 30 years ago. Yeah, but there wasn't much there. It certainly wasn't. There was one little surf camp. We didn't stay at Cloud9, but we were further along in Pacifico. And that village was, we were just adopted by that village. They were just beautiful people, but
the
I'm not
Filipinos
sure.
are just lush humans.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was that typhoon, but I remember seeing footage of Pacifico Village. Somebody had gone through afterwards and taken a video as they went through on a bike, and that was just unbelievable. It was just devastating.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was horrible. That was my first ever deployment in the humanitarian sector, and I went out there to go and do needs assessments, and yeah, it's like proper that hand of God stuff where the whole town's like Tacloban was totally leveled, and
yeah.
yeah,
We'll come back to that, Daniel. So if we go on, so you climbed up, you found higher ground, and what happened? You just hung out there for a while until you knew everything was settled, and then did you come back to the camp, start trying to
yeah.
find
So
your gear or find those families?
yeah, so it was like it was really yeah. Is it like the time started to morph for a bit, but essentially we were in the jungle trying to get everyone back to Colombo to fly home to their various countries over the next like seven days. But I forgot to say, as we were running over the bridge, as we were running over this little bridge to then find that pathway to the right, I remember seeing this bus on its side, and like more or less up on its side, almost upside down. And it had obviously been driving over the bridge at the time the wave came through, and it washed it into this lagoon. And yeah, I was like, I should swim over there. I know I'm capable. I should swim over there. But yeah, I was like, so much chaos, mess and noise and screaming and stuff. I was like, that's like one of the big regrets, is that I didn't try and swim over there to see if I could help in any way. But then we go inland, and first of all we come across this another guest house, and people are hanging out of the windows on the next floor up, and it hasn't. I think the water had only just come to the base of it, and we were only maybe 200 meters inland, but it was just because it's on this rise, and yeah, they're like, oh my God, what's going on? And we told them what had happened, and they were like, come in. So we went in, and I remember saying to a few of the folks that had quite bad bleeding, I was like, let's try and see if we can find a first aid kit here, a proper one, because the one we found was like just those little stick-on plasters, but people were like reasonably cut and needed a bit more trauma care. And so we got some real basic first aiding then. And I remember we kind of cycled through a couple of their showers as well. Like they had a surfing shower outside, and we were all there just trying to wash out all of the crap out of cuts and whatnot. And then we were like, okay, what are we going to do? And the people that had been through that with me were all like, let's get to some higher ground, because that was the first time we heard someone say, oh, it was a tsunami. Did you hear? And they'd explained like, yeah, that was definitely a tsunami, and they were like, and sometimes you get more after this one, and that was it. We were like, okay, we're out here, and so we went inland further to try and find some bigger rises. And I remember we were walking inland with not much of a goal really, but just to find somewhere higher, and came into this little village in the jungle, and we sat down there, and the folks came out of all these little village shelters and homes, and were coming around, and like none of us spoke the language. but they were like, I remember this one guy was trying to wave the flies off my back because I had a load of scratches and cuts down my back. And he was trying to wave the flies out, and he then came out, disappeared, came out again with this little T-shirt, and he's like, "You need to put this on, put this on." So I did, and it was like far too small for me, but it had this beautiful like teddy bear and like some scroll writing of daughter across it, and he'd obviously pinched off his daughter. But to try and keep all these flies that were trying to like lay eggs or whatever in my back. And he came out with loads of balls of rice and was just trying to hand them out to everyone. And then we moved in further. And I remember walking along and realising that my ankle was really swollen and like really swollen. And I must have hit it with something. And I was like hobbling along, and this just some dude came over on his little moped, kind of ushered me on the back and just kind of gently pootled along with the group of us like vagabonds trying to seek in shelter, and he just like gently puttered along, not communicating or anything like that, just so I didn't have to walk. And then we got to this like that little walk took the best part of the day, where we were just trying to find somewhere and make a bit of a plan, and then someone from the family that we were staying with came to find us, and it turned out that there was some, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like some moon festival that a lot of the family had actually gone early in the morning up to the temples to go and to do their praying, and so they had been totally spared all of this, which was like is a beautiful thing. And it was only like a couple of the staff members that had stayed at the guest house, and then hopefully with the family that were behind us were maybe at the same festival as well, because we never found them and we never got any word on them either. But yeah, so we ended up staying.
Still to this day. To this day, you never found out. Yeah.
No. And so one of the family members, this guy called Santa, like I don't know if it's his actual name, but that's what everyone was calling him. And he was like, he's really cool, renegade, Sri Lankan dude, so much fun. But he was like, "Come and stay with me, like we'll figure this out." And they spoke really broken English, but he was like, "You come and stay." And we got to his house, and it was like super basic, like single skin block building, beaten earth floor, some wriggly tin roof, and the 8 or so of us all slept out just out the front under the stars that evening. And another member of the same family had come with this big like dish full of curry and another one of rice, and basically fed us. And I remember with the first aid kit that we had, I was going around trying to patch up who I could, and there was a couple of lifeguards as well there that were kind of administering like the basic first aid, and myself, Dave, because our friend Ben had flown back only a few days beforehand back to Cornwall to have Christmas with his family, and my friend Dave, Poole, Donna and myself kind of made a bit of we were the older ones in the group of people there, and we were like, okay, let's kind of, here's the plan, let's try and get all of the younger folks on cars, buses, whatever we can, because we didn't have any money, we didn't have wallets or anything like that. We'd all literally, some of us didn't even have the clothes that we started the day with. It was but we were like, here's the deal, we'll get everyone back to Colombo and we'll make sure we're last folks to leave. And we're like, yeah, cool with that. And that was day one. And then
someday, there was no thought of going back to the guest house to look among the rubble to try and find your stuff, or is that just
not that day? No, like I'll be honest, like we were pretty scared that it was going to come through again, and so we started hearing news about the devastation. Like Santa had a radio, and so like he was trying to translate what the news was, and he was like, I remember him saying it's all over the world. I was like, what? No, it can't be. Like that's like asteroid level, whatever it is. But and then I remember him saying that it's going to come again, and all the way through the night, at certain points you would hear screaming throughout, like as it rolls down the hill through the jungle down to the sea, you'd almost hear little roars of screaming, like and I figure it was, there was like news reports or alerts or something like that, that everyone was warning that there'd be more coming. And at night time, you know, any noise or, you know, maybe that big set comes through and you can hear the crashing, and that was enough. And everyone was like, yeah, fully spinning out.
On edge. Yeah. I
It
do
was,
remember hearing the news. It just came in kind of. It was quite odd. It just, the first report was the tsunami, and you know, the amount of damage and death and destruction, sort of, you only heard about it. It was like still 10 days later they were, you know, they were saying, okay, now we're up to 200,000 people dead.
yeah.
But it took so long for all that to come out, you know, and even not like today, I suppose, there'd be footage and all kinds of things, but it wasn't like that Japanese tsunami or anything like that. It was just incremental bits of news that kept building up to this horrific hole, right?
Yeah. And I think
And
some of that was
probably
like,
even less so for you, you know, you would have.
oh yeah, we didn't hear it like any
Yeah.
decent news until like 7 days later, really. But I recall that it was like the main road around Sri Lanka's coast was like a bit of a trunk road, so a lot of supplies would move around there, and but the wave had cut it all off, and so access for information and everything like that had been cut off, and then the country kind of went into a bit of a lockdown. So there was a fuel shortage and food shortage and all of this good stuff. And I think there was an issue with the port up in Colombo. I can't really remember, but yeah, it was like, yeah, just word of mouth stuff. But this is where it gets really fun then, because fun, no, it's the wrong word, but like more like interesting is, so next morning we wake up and this mad German guy that was living out in Sri Lanka that we'd met a couple of times had this beetle, chopped up beetle, and he used to go, like, you could see him charging off to the horizon with loads of boards stuck out the back of the beetle, and we'd seen him a couple of times, but he kind of drove straight up in the morning and he's like, hey, we heard about you guys, and there's someone further down the coast over at Welligama, there's this like outcrop of rock just at the bay there, and there's a hotel on top of it, and he's like, yeah, someone set up a bit of a like an emergency clinic there. Have you got anyone that's like sick or poorly or anything like that? And they're saying, just come along if you need any help, because at the moment no help's coming. And we were like, oh man, yeah, there's a few of us. And like, I remember my back was all cut up. There was my friend Dave who had a hole in his shin. There was weeping. There was the French guy that got electrocuted. There was a couple there that were definitely dealing with some really horrible psychological injuries. And I was like, yeah, how many can you fit in? And then like spoke to everyone. I was like, I've got some paper, I've got a pen. Can I have everyone's name and your nationalities, like full names, nationalities? So I wrote them all down. And I said, I'm going to see what I can get us, see if I can get us some more food, or if I can secure some transport or anything. And like we kind of, yeah, we basically went through and saw who needed support most. Those people jumped in the car, I jumped in as well. We headed over to the hotel, and there were these two nurses, and I can't remember where they were from, but they were on a honeymoon, and they hadn't even had the wedding. No, they had the honeymoon. They'd only just got there, and then the tsunami came through and blocked everything off, and they were there with like whatever they could find, and they just had random people turning up with like cuts and stab wounds and stuff from being washed in through the jungle, and they were doing whatever they could. And there was people walking around with like sanitary towels sellotaped on them and things like that, you know, just anything. And they had this big bottle of iodine, and they cleared out Dave's shin, and I remember them actually plugging it with a tampon, and it worked. Like, it stopped weeping, and yeah, like
some honeymoon.
Yeah, man, these guys. But they, it was beautiful to see, and I've seen this loads now, like being around disasters a lot, but just how everyone pulls together just to kind of get through that emergency phase. And there was this other dude, a Danish business guy, who was walking around with a satellite phone and was literally just saying, hey man, do you need to call anyone? Like, I was like, yeah, please. And so I had this list of names of everyone's nationalities and all their names, and so I thought at the very least I'll phone someone and I will get the word out that these people are okay and where we are, see if I can get us any help. And so the only number that I knew off the top of my head was my dad's, and so I phoned him up, and he's a copper in the UK. He's retired now, but like it was actually no, this was two. I think this was 2 days in. I can't remember what happened the first day, but this was 2 days in because I remember phoning up and thinking, I'm sure he because I don't reach out to them that much when I'm away on surf trips, and like back in the day when you weren't mobile phones weren't so like used, I guess, and capable, you just didn't bother, did you? You'd like phone every now and then. But yeah, I phoned him up and he's like, "Oh my God, we heard the news. I was wondering, like, oh, thank God you're alive." I was like, "Oh, Dad, I've only got like a couple of seconds, but I've got a list of names," and told him what the scat was. I was like, "This is where we are. This is the situation, and this is our plan. We're planning to get everyone up to Colombo. All the roads are shut. Like, we're just going to try and figure this one out. But next time I speak to you, don't know when that is, but this is what we're trying to achieve." And he's like, "Okay." So I gave him the name, and it turned out when I got home, he's like, "Yeah, I was." He was interviewed, I think, to go on Sky TV because it was one of the first people that hadn't been heard of that managed to get some word out. But yeah, so that was really useful, and it turned out there was a bus coming the next day, and that some people could get on it and travel up to Colombo. And so we went back to where we were staying at Santa's place. We gathered up whoever we could, got them to the bus. That was the first lot of people gone, and felt all the more better for that. And then over the next couple of days, it was like similar to that. Like we'd go down, we'd try and salvage what we could, but there was hardly anything. I couldn't find any boards. I found my passport literally just like floating in a puddle.
Wow.
But no one else found theirs. Like everyone else's was gone. No clothes or anything like that. So it was just like my daughter t-shirt and a pair of like boardies, and that was it really. And yeah, and then over those days we were just anytime I think essentially the community had rallied round and were trying to find people that would travel, even though they knew they might not be able to get fuel. And so every now and then someone would turn up and they're like, "Yeah, we can take a couple of people," or we'd flag someone down if we heard a car coming through the jungle our way, and like begging them to take us. We didn't have any money, but yeah. And finally I remember we'd got everyone travelling except for us last little bunch. And then out of nowhere, someone turned up with like this small minibus, and they're like, "Hey, we've managed to find someone that will take you up to Colombo." And yeah, after those I think it was like 4 or 5 days in the jungle, then we were on the road, and it was like pure elation, and like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And we'd travel up through the centre of Sri Lanka to Colombo, and then that's kind of like the end of phase 2 of like, I suppose, a 3-part little mini adventure.
Yeah. Can I ask, when you got on that minibus and left, did a part of you go, was it hard to leave? Was it hard to leave those people that were there, and that you're like, you're left in this shit, you got to deal with this shit and I'm out of here?
Yeah. Man, it felt terrible. In fact, like when we went to
you
leave,
would have been stoked to get out, like, because it's a horrific, traumatic experience, but
also you're so humbled by it. Like,
yeah,
you recognise the families that have been looking after you for that time now have zero means of income. They're missing family members. Like, they're still trying to figure out what's going to happen for them, like in terms of food even. Like when the wave came through along the coastline, it's largely seafood and rice, and the paddy fields had all been I can't remember what the word is now, but essentially saturated by sea salt. So that crop was destroyed, and that was the one that takes them through to the next year of planting as well. So you recognise the turmoil that you were essentially escaping. Like, you were blessed to say, "Oh, this has been horrendous, I want to leave." And so you're entirely right. And like this guy, as we were about to leave, came running up the hill, and he's one of the young Sri Lankan guys that we were surfing with. And he came running up, and he had my JS surfboard under his arm. I had this like cool camo rail around it, a little 511 thruster, and he came running up the hill with it, and it was like there was a couple of dings, but he'd repaired them, and he came running up. He's like, "Oh, Daniel, Mr. Daniel, like you're bored," and like I was like, "No way, man, I'm not taking that." Like I felt bad enough that we were driving away from that situation. I'm definitely not taking this with me. And he used to surf a real piece of junk, and I was like, "No, man, this is yours. Like, thank you so much for repairing it." And like, I wish I could stay. I wish I could do more. And like,
Yeah.
but this is for you now. And like, it's nothing. I hope that he's got some money for it or managed to get some good waves on it. But yeah, you're right. It did feel like mixed elation that
Yeah.
we're getting away, but the further we got away, the more I just felt bad for making it. So certainly when you hear all of the families up and down the coast that lost their whole families.
Yeah. It doesn't sound like there was a huge amount of loss of life in that particular area that you were in. Would that be
Yeah,
right,
it
or
was,
did you really just not know?
didn't really know, but it was so rural that I
Yeah.
think you're kind of foregoing places like in Indo. Turns out one of my colleagues from Shelterbox, she was at the time a BBC reporter over in Indonesia, or was it Thailand? I can't remember. But yeah, she was in the thick of it there when it was all happening as well. And then later on, we'd be working on the same programs in Ukraine together, and like, going, did you just say you were in like the Boxing Day tsunami? No way! And then we had this whole like recognizing it from different parts of the world, but the carnage. But
Yeah.
yeah, in terms of life lost, I don't know how bad it was where we were, but we know of some of the families that went missing.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's phase 3? You get to
Yeah, so
Colombo.
this is more of a like again an interesting springboard to where I am now. So essentially, we turned up at Colombo. We went to the embassy. That's where we got dropped off. We thanked the person that was driving, and it turned out to be a cousin of one of the people that we were staying with. And we didn't have any money whatsoever, but he was like, "Next time you come, you can pay me back." And yeah, it was beautiful. And so we walk into this like clean, pristine building, with the sodium lights and like the cashiers at the end there. And we walk in, and I'm explaining what had just happened, and they're like, "Yeah, we've had quite a few of you folks coming through." They were like, "There's not much we can do. We're not really set up for this kind of thing. We're more about like dealing with visas and things like that." I was like, "Okay, cool. Well, most of us don't have passports. Like, what should we do?" And they're like, "Oh, it's a bit of a tricky one. We'll try and process, we'll try and process something that means that you can get on that flight home." And I was like, "Okay, cool. And do you know when that would be? Like, do we need to try and, is there any accommodation anywhere?" And they're like, "Yeah, there's loads of hotels in the city." I was like, "We don't have anything, like literally nothing." And they're like, "Oh, okay. Well, there is a collection site where anyone, like all the internally displaced people, were going to these particular hotels, had given up some space, and you can go and sleep in some of their banquet halls or like meeting rooms. And while the government was setting up proper collection centres, and yeah, it was so weird. Like, we really had to beg for them to, and they ended up clubbing round to pay for a taxi to take the rest of us, all of us, to this one hotel. But like, we were, like, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is something that the government should be trying to surely support us with." And we went outside, and one of my friends that smoked says, "I'm just going to go outside, have a quick breather." Someone to give him some cigarettes. He went out, and there was someone from the kiosk, like from the government, was out there, and he's like, "Hey, I hear you guys." He goes, "You guys surfers?" Looking at us, and we were all like just boardies and suntans, and Dave's like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Oh, I hear Boxing Day had some of the best waves you've ever surfed," or something like that. And Dave like launched for this guy who was about to
I was
spring
going to
his
say.
jaw. He's like, it's not a joke, man. There's like people
Yeah.
have died, and pulled Dave off. And I was like, man, you need to like really check that sense of humor. We're really tired. It's been a time. And eventually we get this taxi. We go to the hotel, and after sleeping like on the jungle floor for the last few nights, oh my gosh, sleeping on a shag pile carpet was just divine. And they had aircon on as well, and it helped kind of start drying out our cuts. And some medical teams came through and were doing like medical triaging and sorting out various people. And I remember it was the first time that this is cool. It was the first time like I got to have a proper shower, and the hotel was like, there's a shower room by the pool. The pool is off limits, but go and help yourself, have showers and whatnot. It's up on like the third floor or something. And so I went up there and I said to Donna, like, because we hadn't actually been apart from each other since this has happened. And I was like, I'm just going to go and get a shower. And Don was like, we're quite close to the coast. And I was like, yeah, we are. Like, we're right on the coast. Do you want to come and wait outside? Like, and she's like, no, I'll be okay. And I went up, I got in the shower, and I peeled off that daughter t-shirt, and it had like brown on the back. And I washed it under the shower. And did the whole, you know, when you're in the shower and you strip everything off and you're just standing around on it with your shampoo trying to clean all your clothes. And I was doing that and trying to clean out the cuts and whatnot. And I remember there was this Japanese guy kind of had walked through. It was one of those big open shower things. And I remember he clocked me and stood there. And I was like, oh, maybe my back's really bad, because I had my back to him. And I was like looking over. And he was looking at me. And then he went away. And I finished off my shower. And I had the towel and the dressing gown that they gave us. And as I walked out, this guy was there, stood there, really smart suit. And he had another suit in his hand. He's like a little bow. And he's like, I hear you guys have lost everything. And please, can I give you some clothes? And
Yeah, suit.
he was going to give me this suit. But I was like, coming back to that point you made earlier about, did you feel bad for leaving? Like, I felt bad for accepting anything. Like, I didn't want anything. Like, I just wanted to be back in my crusty t-shirt. And
Yeah.
it was really wild. And I was like, I'm so grateful, but I can't accept this. And he didn't quite understand it, and maybe it was rude, I don't know, but I just couldn't accept it. And
I was going
and
to
then we
say
were
that
there
would
for
have been a mad transformation if you went back to your friends wearing a
Yeah,
snappy
man.
suit. Hey,
little
fellas.
fuzzy beard and looking fresh. But yeah, so the hotel was really nice. They let us eat after everyone had eaten. We could have all these, and there was all manner of nationalities, and like some local Sri Lankans as well that didn't have anywhere to stay. And finally, someone came from the embassy and it had all our names on a list and said, "There's a flight going and there's spaces for you." And then a shuttle bus came, collected us, took us to the airport. We had these little pieces of paper for visas, for passports. And then we jumped on the plane, and we're coming to altitude. And I remember sitting next to Dave and him going, "Oh, his shin." And you know how the pressure builds. The pus started coming out of his shin, so it was obviously infected. But as that pressure was working on his shin, it was just like volcanoing out. I was like, oh, no. But loads of nice things just kept on happening, like really beautiful, pure human things. Like the hostesses, all of the air crew had clubbed together and had some cash for us so we could replace some clothes. Or they said, like, here, this is so you've got some food when you get to wherever you're headed, or maybe you can buy yourself a beer or whatever. And they said, or just give it to a charity, whatever you want. And that was really sweet. And then just people were like giving us a bit of a wide berth, not asking any questions, but there were lots of very nice kind of like, the guy next to us was eating and he's like, "Oh, I'm not really that hungry. Would you like my meal?" and all this kind of stuff, you know. And then we land, and my dad had borrowed a police minivan from the Norfolk Constabulary. If they're listening, I'm sure it was all above board. But he brought it and collected us from the airport with a bunch of mince pies and loads of extra coats and clothes. And and Donna's family were there as well. And yeah, then we went back to Norfolk and just felt so weird, like
Yeah, I'd imagine.
so strange that we just left all this like beautiful people in a really horrible position. And yeah, and it took some took some time to like understand
Yeah,
what happened to us, what happened to other friends that were out there, and piece it all together. And so we were only in Norfolk for, I can't remember, maybe a week or so, maybe longer, I can't remember. But Don and I were just like, we just need to get back home, back to Cornwall. And we came down, and like my friend Matt Rowlands, who's a legend, he was like, come on then, we need to get you out surfing, like we need to get you back on the back on the horse. And I was like, yeah, no, I'll be fine, let's go. And so we went out, and it's still winter, obviously, so we've got big winter swells coming through on the North Atlantic rollers smashing our coastline. And we went out to this place in Newquay, Tolkien, which has got this real cool wedge takeoff. It's quite critical, like it just hits the cliffs, bounces back, meets the next bit of swell, and then you just get this jacked up, like launch pad takeoff point. And so you've whizzed down this into quite a smallish wall, really, like a couple of foot wall, but like you've got so much power, you can do whatever you want. But just at the end of the beach, and it's only a small cove, there's this big sea cave, and oh man, I froze. Like I was sat out there, just heart was going a million miles an hour. I was like so scared. and Matt's pretty punk rock, and he's like, no, come on man, you just need to take a drop, that's all you need to do. And I took one of the smallest ones there was, and that was it. Like got straight back to shore, and I was like, I'm just gonna need to take a hot minute here. And and it took a while to get used to like paddling out on bigger days and things like that, or even being in a car like driving along the coast, because you're just, once something like that happens, like you essentially anything can happen. It's like, if anything bad could happen, like it can.
Yeah, of course. So
took a while.
I have experience with that PTSD, but how long do you reckon that would have taken to get over that? How long?
I think with Donna, for example, there's definitely still elements there.
Yeah.
And but because of surfing, I think, and like the community around me of surfers that just wanted to drag me back in the sea, I think my healing in terms of that fear point healed a lot quicker. But I still get, like, when I go to a disaster with my now jobs, I still get, like, the first day or so, I get the palpitations, especially if it's something like an earthquake or a big storm, and you can see more big storms out, more weather systems coming through. I still feel a bit like, okay, anything could happen again. But a couple more days into a deployment, and I start relaxing into it, getting into the zone.
Tell me, what job were you doing at the time before you went out to Sri Lanka?
I think I was a carpenter then.
Okay.
So yeah, I was making money, building homes, fitting stairs, all that good stuff.
Yeah. And then so when you came back, is that when you started working for Shelter Box? Talk us through that bit.
No, it took me a few years, because to get into the humanitarian sector, it's quite tricky. Like, essentially, they want someone that's got a degree most of the time. And so I was trying to save up some money so that so I could put myself through uni and do that. But then I think it was only the next year that we still wanted to go, and we wanted to go to Australia. I'd been to Australia as a youngster for between New Zealand and Australia for a year when I was younger, just surfing. And Donna really wanted to go, and so she's like, this is one thing I really want to do, and then we'll come back and do the whole grown-up thing. And so we saved up some and then went out to Australia. And then when I came back, I started looking, like we spent a year out in Oz together and New Zealand. Then when we came back, I was really I was building still, doing carpentry and looking for work within the sector. And then I bumped into someone that was just starting a multi-sectoral needs assessment charity, so humanitarian charity. And and they at the time they were looking at standing up like a search and rescue team, but for within disasters, and they needed someone that was good with ropes. And because my previous life, I was this kind of low-level mountain guide, I had all the tickets still they wanted, and got my first job in the humanitarian sector, being a ropes technical expert and search and rescue kind of professional.
Yeah.
Which
so
then,
Daniel, before we go into that, can we just wind back a little bit? So when you came home, did you go, this is what I want to do. I want to help people that have gone through things like this. And then you thought, okay, I want to get work in the humanitarian sector. Is that how that came about? Or did you already have this in your head before the tsunami?
I knew I wanted to do something like some sort of service to others. And I guess like both my mum and dad were in the police force, and that's kind of like, and then their parents were military and farmers, and this kind of idea of service to others has always been pretty cool, but not really knowing how to apply it.
Okay.
And then
that would have cemented it further, I guess, seeing that.
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like recognizing how lucky we are, like, you know, to be able to save some money, go traveling for surf, buying new surfboards every few years, like when you break them, and like having that disposable income and being in a comfortable position. Like, I just desperately wanted to be able to do some altruism. Yeah. So yeah, that was I was trying to figure out how to engage it.
You became this technical ropes expert, and I guess you've had a few jobs in that sector, and now you work for Shelterbox. Can you tell us about Shelterbox and what you do, what they do?
Yeah, so yeah, like worked for a couple of other NGOs. The first one, Rescue Global, and then now I'm with Shelterbox. I've been with Shelterbox for 3 and a bit years now, and I'm a program manager for Western Central Africa regional team, and I cover Burkina Faso and Chad responses that we have there. And Shelterbox is an international charity based in Cornwall, and it started in 2000. And it's like its focus is shelter after disaster, and our strapline is no one should go without shelter after disaster. And so, all of our programming is around that. And originally, I moved into the emergency team, and so you could go anywhere in the world, respond anywhere in the world to go and design a shelter project. And deliver it, and it might be emergency shelter, it might be tarpaulins, tents, anything like that, all the way through to what I do now, which is a mixture of the like really quick, basic emergency stuff through to durable shelters made out of earth bricks that are like not a forever home, but they're going to see people through like a good few years while they try and spring back and get onto their feet. And so that started in 2000, and that was because of the Boxing Day tsunami. It was its first like big spin out in 2004. And that started like a half hour's drive away from where I live now. So there's a beautiful kind of like synergy there. Yeah. And
weirdly, I have before I was a full-time author, I was the editor of a magazine called Element, and that was a sustainable lifestyle and business magazine. You know, it was kind of a greeny eco magazine that slotted into a pretty capitalist New Zealand newspaper.
Right.
And, so we were bringing the green to the right-wing readers by stealth.
However you can do it.
Yeah, but actually one of the earliest articles in that magazine was on Shelterbox. I remember it. Yeah, I think we might have interviewed somebody. It was a long time ago, so it's all a bit hazy.
So we've got affiliates in New Zealand, and some of the teams out there, they'll deploy as well. Because we have some volunteers as well that go through a whole bunch of vetting and training and whatnot. But some of those are from New Zealand. So I think it's in Auckland. Oh my gosh, I can't remember now. But yeah, real cool bunch. In fact, I deployed with one of your fellow Kiwis. We went out to Bangladesh together to go and design a project out there after some floods.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Amazing
It's a
work.
wicked charity. It's worth checking out. Like
Yeah.
they do a lot of cool stuff. And it used to be that we would have a green box, and it would be filled with everything you need to build a shelter. And then we'd package loads of these up and would fly them everywhere, and then just distribute them out to the families that were most vulnerable
Yep.
and most in need. But it's over the years, it's been more. We've recognised more that it needs to be kind of really tailored to the context, the people's needs, to how long they're going to stay in the context as well. So now it will be like we'll rock up. Our fundraising teams do amazing work at trying to bring in funding, and we'll turn up, with our expertise and experience, and try and find local partners, and say, hey, like this is what we see as the problem. Let's do some needs assessments. Let's design a project together to try and reach as many people as we can with some good quality shelter intervention. And it's really varied depending on which country you're working in.
Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah. I wanted to go back to your when you mentioned you saw that bus that had overturned off the bridge, and your regret of not going over to it. Does that still trouble you? Like, I know you said you still you regret it, but do you? Yeah, it felt like it's one of those situations where you're in a really frightening situation, and you also probably felt responsible for the people that were walking along that road with you, and your girlfriend at the time, your wife now, to do that, yeah, and put yourself at risk by going to do something like that.
Yeah,
It's I don't know.
I think like nail on the head. So yes, and there's like various things I regret. Like I regret not getting Donna to the airport and then sending her off, and then coming back and trying to just anything, just mucking out buildings, doing whatever I could to support people. But I recognise that's also going to be a drain on the local communities. Someone's going to need to feed me,
Yeah.
and but I was a builder, so like I could do some stuff. But the
You're certainly making it up for it now, it seems,
Yeah, yeah. That's the nice thing. Like, but yeah, the bus thing is like, yeah. I mean, I don't know how useful I would have been, but I do wish that I had. I felt like I had my job, and my mission was to get these friends out of that situation and try and find us a safe space.
Yeah.
And yeah, some of them were really injured and traumatized, and that was my responsibility, and like where I could be of best service. But that is like, that was like the nightmare that I would have every now and then of like even being in the bus with like trying to get people out and it sinking and all these horrible things. But
yeah, I mean, I guess that there's a term for it, right? That's survivor's guilt, but it's yeah, I guess have you had counselling to get through? I mean, you don't have to answer this, man. This is your stuff, but I feel like I've mentioned it in one of the other podcasts. I nearly lost my son when he was 18 months old, and when we did CPR, mouth to mouth, the whole thing, he fell into a swimming pool and by all intents and purposes drowned. Yeah, and it was kind of a miracle that we got him back. And I remember probably 5 years I was in, and I had terrible PTSD, and then
I can imagine.
I sat down beside a guy who's at Manu Bay in Raglan, and there was a surf comp on, and his daughter was in the comp, and he had left his job to become a psychotherapist, and I sat with him like a good part of the day just watching the comp, and we talked it all through, and it was incredible how healing that was and how cathartic it was just to kind of get it all out. Yeah. So that power of that talk therapy is incredibly strong, and there was also guilt as well. Like we didn't have our eyes on him. It was a kind of a freakish scenario that he actually ended up in the pool. But Yeah, it's interesting. There's another podcast, a guy called Will Allen, that you can listen to. He's probably on a couple before yours. I'm not sure exactly what number issue he is, but him and his friends saved some people from an upturned boat that was getting smashed by waves.
Oh
But there
wow.
was a girl who died, a 2-year-old girl died, and as he paddled out to the boat, his friend was already there, and he looked at his friend. He was diving under the boat, coming up, looking for this girl, and there was fishing rods and shit and hooks and all this. He said it was the bravest thing he'd ever seen, and he said, to be honest, if he'd got there first, he doesn't think he doesn't know whether he would have been able to do what his friend was doing. He was just going in and out, taking a breath in for 30 seconds in this dark water with waves and all this stuff, you know.
Yeah.
It's incredible what
Oh
what a
man.
human, I don't know. It's the whole thing is pretty traumatic and hard to deal with, but
Yeah, I'm sorry.
telling your story and talking about it's got to be good for you, you know. And I hope you don't keep holding that guilt for something like that, you know, because you had responsibilities and you were in a situation that no one should have to be
Mm.
in, you know.
Yeah. No, it is tricky. And like, no, we didn't. I didn't. I think we went to go and get counselling like afterwards because someone said like you need to go and get some counselling,
Yeah,
and I think it just didn't like nothing was really working. It was very like matter of fact, and we were kind of more or less told like it felt pretty old school British. Would you like a cup of tea? And and yeah, it wasn't what we needed. But what was good was meeting up with the guys and girls that were involved, and yeah, having a couple of jars with them and talking it over like that peer to peer support really
yeah,
worked for me. And I do wish that I'd gone through. I think it's like the stigma has gone away from it a lot now, which I'm really pleased about because yeah, I've used it for the work that I do now. Like we've got an employee support network where you can phone up and just have a no holds barred vent after a deployment. Like you see some stuff and
yeah,
you just need to talk it through and get it off your chest. And yeah, it's so healthy. Um, but at the time, no. And I think by the time I wanted to get into it, it was probably too late. I think everything felt quite calcified. But yeah, I'm solid. Like I'm solid now,
yeah.
and
I don't think
that
it's ever
bit.
too late, Daniel. I don't
You
agree
reckon?
with that. I don't think so. No,
Ah,
I think even by talking about it today, you probably have taken a little bit of the weight of it away. You know,
mm.
I might be wrong.
Yeah.
I'm no psychotherapist or psychiatrist, but yeah,
No, you are probably right.
yeah, mate, that's some story. Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing it with us. Um,
Oh no, it's an interesting one to tell. Like you were like it's it's a shitty situation, and to retell it and be someone that got away from it, and like all my friends, we came away from it, and like it feels a bit clunky to be able to tell it again. I like to tell it because I like to advertise what Shuttlebox does.
yeah,
So if I'm given the opportunity, like last Boxing Day, a local newspaper wanted to talk to people about it, and uh, and so I was happy to talk about it. And then when you approached, I was like, yeah, okay. And but yeah, it's clunky. Like I don't like being the center of attention with anything. But it is nice to go through it and
yeah.
raise
And
awareness.
those little moments of beauty and kindness and compassion. You know, it's ultimately when you look back on it, obviously there was tragedy and a whole lot of stuff, but it sort of reaffirms the human spirit a little bit too, you know?
And I get that as well with when you go traveling for surf or you're out and about in general. Like you constantly bump into wonderful people that would take the t-shirt off their own back, well, maybe their daughter's back, to give to you, if you were in need. And
Yeah,
I know that people like yourself. I don't know you, but I'm getting good vibes from you, and I essentially I know that someone could rock up at the door and you'll take care of him, and it's so easy in this day and age to get carried away with what you're fed on the broadsheets and in the newspapers and on the TV and think, oh my gosh, like 25, what a nightmare. But you have to remember all those beautiful human interactions, like even those 20 odd years ago, like that's still out there. You still have those beautiful human moments with people, and it is a joyous thing. And I find that the surfing is a really nice way to connect with beautiful people. Quite often you find yourself in the maddest situations, but with just good humans that,
Yeah, I'm into that. Nice one. All right, Daniel. Thanks for sharing your story. Yeah.
All right, mate.
I hope you enjoyed the show. If you have a mad surf story or know of one, get in touch by emailing me at james@dragonbrothersbooks.com. The following is a chapter of one of my surf novels. You can listen to the rest wherever you get your audiobooks, including Spotify, Audible, Apple Books and Google Play. Or if you like books made of paper, you can find them on my website at dragonbrothersbooks.com. Just click on the menu and select Books for Adults. Or you can buy them on Amazon. All the best. Lines, written and narrated by James Russell. Chapter 5. Ah, for fuck's sake, says Pat. I've just finished telling him that at the pub where I worked for a month when I was 17, when we knew we were going to be busy, we'd half fill pint glasses with Guinness and leave them in the fridge until someone ordered one, and then we'd top it off, just so that we didn't have to wait for it to settle. You heathens, he concludes, laughing. No one ever complained, I tell him. In Australia, everyone knows Guinness tastes like shit. Pat laughs even more, his great shoulders heaving up and down. That's priceless, he says. I've been here for 2 weeks, but he still says I'm useless at it. He has me pour a pint. I sit it up on the bar and he eyes it carefully. That'll do, he says, and then he winks at me. You'd better see if it tastes any good. I fill a glass with ice and open a club orange for Pat. Then I come around to the other side of the bar and we sit on the bar stools. There isn't a soul in the pub, but Pat keeps it open because there's always a few that come in for a late drink. Mikey told me that there's a rumour Pat used to be in the IRA. Either that or he sheltered IRA soldiers when the Brits came looking for them. No one really knows, and everyone's too scared to ask, he said. Mikey was thrilled when I told him I saw Pat turn off the TV when the English rugby team played last week. I pluck up the courage to ask Pat the favour I've wanted to for days. I need 2 weeks' wages in advance. I'm totally skint. I'm sleeping on Anto's couch and I wake every morning with a sore back. I want to get a place of my own, but I can't pay for it. The last of my money ran out a week ago. Anto has been paying for everything. I knew the Irish had a reputation for their hospitality, but Anto takes it to a new level. He gets angry when I try to stop him from spending his money on me. Pat doesn't hesitate. Of course you can, he says. He tells me he'll organise it tomorrow, and that's that. He goes around the bar, pulls a 50 out of the till and hands it to me. To tide you over, he says, sitting down again. I start to gush my thanks, but he holds up his hand. Please, he says, think nothing of it. You're very welcome. I sit with the 50 in my hand, silently overwhelmed at his kindness. It reminds me of my mum. He's curious about Australia, asking the questions I might expect from a child. Just how dry is it, actually? How often would you see a kangaroo? Can the spiders really kill you? He listens intently as I tell him the answers. He's without ego. He has no interest in being heard or telling his own stories. He just wants to listen. He'll listen for hours, and he's like this with everyone. He's endlessly tolerant. I don't know if it's the result of running a pub or the reason he can stand it. It makes me laugh how Pat phrases his questions. Now, If I was a young man of about your age in Australia, what would I be doing for fun? He's funny as fuck without meaning to be, and often genuinely mystified when I laugh at him. What, he says, what's so funny? But I can't explain it to him in any possible way that he'll see the humour in it too. I have to push him to get him talking, to tell me about himself. He believes his life is entirely uninteresting. Pat has 2 businesses, this and the Undertakers, that bizarre coupling of enterprises common across Ireland, drink and death. Genius when you think about it. Too much of one leads to the other, and a good payout from both. Why would you want to know about that, he says, when I ask him what it's like being an undertaker. Are you kidding, I say? Why would I not? Pat tells me he inherited the pub and the undertaker's business from his father, who ran it for 50 years before him. His mother died when he was very young, so then it was just himself and his dad, who was a hopeless alcoholic, meaning most days it was up to him to keep everything going. It sounds desperate and lonely to me, but Pat recounts it without emotion. In all his life, he's never touched an alcoholic drink, he tells me, for fear that his father's addiction is hereditary. Pat tells me the story of the time when his father forgot to put petrol in the hearse, spending the money on drink instead, and how it shuddered to a stop halfway down the main street during the funeral procession of a local councillor. It was the biggest funeral of the year. 300 people were tailing the car, walking slowly down the street behind it. They were only a short distance from the cemetery. Pat, at 13 years old, was in the passenger seat of the hearse, his father driving. When his father realised what had happened, he froze, paralysed by shame and panic. Pat got out, walked around the car, and swung open the back door of the hearse. Pat laughs as he remembers that his voice cracked and warbled as he spoke to the crowd. He told them that as a man of great importance to the town of Bundoran, it would be only fitting that the councillor make his final journey carried high on the shoulders of the people whom he loved and served so selflessly. The men came forward, nodding in agreement, pulled the coffin from the hearse, and the procession continued with Pat at its head. His father, mortified, stayed in the hearse, his head down. Pat tells me that he embalmed his first body at 15, entirely on his own, and was all but running the business by the time he left school. 2 years later, his father was dead of cirrhosis, and Pat was in charge of everything. From that day to this, Pat says to me, tapping the bar, I've only ever had a week off, 4 days for my honeymoon, and 3 when my son was born. It's the first I've heard of a son, and I ask him about him. He tells me that his son was killed along with his best friend 4 years ago in a head-on collision just outside of Bundoran. The other driver was in his mid-20s, drunk and high. Pat tells me that his son's name was Seamus. He was good at school, the best hurler in the county for his age. Volunteered at St. Vincent de Paul on weekends. He could play the flute and the tin whistle, and sometimes played right here in the pub with a crowd of musicians that gather for a session every Sunday. Tears well in Pat's eyes as he talks, and they fall onto his cheeks, but he's not embarrassed by them. He doesn't wipe them away. Pat tells me that his grief at losing Seamus brought him to the brink of taking his own life and nearly destroyed his marriage. It was like driving through pea soup fog, he says, oppressive and endless, and without any certainty that it would ever lift.